This is The Speaking Show. I'm David Newman, and you're tuned in to the #1 podcast for speakers, consultants, and experts who want to speak more profitably. All right, I am talking with Steve Rodgers, former CEO of a Warren Buffett company, and now speaker, coach, consultant extraordinaire.
Well, thank you, David. I really appreciate the invite.
So I want to take you back to your CEO days. I know it's ancient history, but there you are. You're the alpha dog. You're the top dog. You're making things happen in the San Diego real estate market. How did speaking play a role while you were actively a CEO and leading your companies?
Yeah, it was actually a big part of what we did with it, whether it was in real estate offices that I managed or conventions or conferences or trainings that we did. And as the company grew, being a leader was a big part of speaking. So I was always in front of groups trying to get the message across to me that the company vision about what we were working on, or B, inspiring salespeople to get more effective with their customers in the marketplace. So there were many, many times I would speak in front of 100 or 1,000 people, depending as the company grew. At our peak, our company grew to 5,000 agents. So there was a lot of opportunity to speak and inspire.
And when did you realize that, hey, this could be the next chapter of my career. This could be the next chapter of my business. This speaking thing might have legs.
That's interesting. It was probably earlier in my career because what I did even when I was a general manager or a COO is I was always really involved in the training aspect of the company. So I would always invite outside speakers in that had, nothing to do with real estate, like Brian Tracy or, Jim Bunch or John Asseroff or various people that I thought could open up mindset. And I always got to introduce them. And in addition to introducing them, sometimes I spoke on stage with them. And Brian Tracy ended up becoming a good friend of mine and my coach eventually. So I realized when I was toe-to-toe with these people who were professional speakers and national known people, and I was comfortable on stage with them, and I was comfortable in that flow. And when I'd walk off stage, I'd have these thoughts of, I think I might want to do that one day. So it was probably 5 or 6, maybe 7 years before I finished being a CEO that I thought that at some point that would be a chapter of my life.
And I'll tell you, I guess there's some not bad press, but kind of the bad stereotype out there that people come from a big corporate background, they're a CEO, they're a C-level executive, everything's been taken care of for them. They have an army of minions that help them. Then they go out as an entrepreneur, as a solo speaker, consultant, coach, and they're like, hey, what happened? I no longer have my team. My phone calls aren't being returned in 30 minutes or less. So take us back to when you first got started as a standalone speaker. What was that transition like? What was surprising? What was fun? What was weird? What was going through your mind?
Yeah, that's a great description and a great question. I remember, I had a little bit of a precursor on it because at the tail end of being a CEO, the real estate market was kind of crashing and imploding in 2007-8. So our staff was quickly dwindling. So my big staff that I had got smaller and smaller because we had to cut so much. And then I went out and ran my own real estate company for 5 years as an entrepreneur before I became a speaker. And that was done with a lot of much smaller budget. It reminded me of when I was in the restaurant business and I had to wait tables, bartend, be the maitre d', be the general manager, and whoever didn't show up that day, I had to do it. So as soon as I got into my consulting practice and I would be making my list at night or getting my schedules ready for the week, whether it was marketing or promotion or presentations or PowerPoints or content or research, I'd say, oh, I'm going to delegate that to, oh, that's me. Oh, I'm going to delegate that to, oh, that's me. And I had one virtual assistant that I was using out of the Philippines, and then I had someone I had locally, and I could have them do some of it. But it was a big, big adjustment from having a large team who would handle technology or marketing or PR or follow-up or appointment setting. So it was a big adjustment, and it did cut into my productivity time for sure and getting me back on a rhythm of my game because I just was out of flow, and it created a lot of frustration. I was still having successes, but it wasn't at the magnitude and the speed in which I was used to having it previously.
Wow. Well, that was my next question is, can you walk us through kind of some of the highs and the lows? Because it sounds like it's very exciting to be back to a skeleton crew, you and the virtual assistant. But was it at some point depressing? Were you scratching your head at some point going, why am I doing all this work? And how hard can it be to push these boulders up these hills? Or walk us through the highs and the lows.
Well, luckily, the first year was pretty, even though I had a small team of people helping me and it was cumbersome at times, it was very, very exciting. I knew that I was being called at a higher level and a higher consciousness and a higher purpose of doing what I needed to do. And I was really in flow, even though I had a speed bump. So I never in the first year thought, why am I doing this? What did I get myself into? I was having fun. I was enjoying it. I was enjoying having a lifestyle where I was working probably half my time from home on Skype calls and conference calls and prospecting, and then other half of my time out in the field traveling locally or even internationally when I started speaking. So like, wow, it was a lifestyle change that I was creating where for 20, 25 years, every morning I woke up, I was used to being responsible for so many people in my mind, even though I maybe wasn't in their lives, but I mean, payroll and, who's going to make sales today and who's coming and who's leaving and who are we going to lose? And so when I woke up in mornings and it was just me and the handful of clients that I started with, the pressures that I had, it was just a whole new fresh of breath air that I never realized I was carrying for 20 or 25 years. And I had this sense of freedom. So that sense of freedom gave me a big peace of mind to get through those hurdles and to get over the obstacles when someone didn't get back to me fast enough, or someone didn't sign the contract fast enough, or I didn't get the gigs I thought. I was totally in acceptance. My mantra was, and still is, I'm living present in the present moment. And I was just really conscious, and still am to this day, of being very present and in gratitude, in complete flow of wherever my life is in that moment. So that was the way I kind of continue to flow through it. The second year, there was a little bit more different conversation than that, but the first year was that mindset.
So I love that. Second year, a little bit different. So second year was a little bit more frustrating, or a little bit more, you kind of slowed down a little bit, or what happened in that second year?
Well, the second year, what happened was the first year, pretty much all my business came from referrals. Like as soon as I announced what I was going to do, I didn't really have to do any marketing or promotion. And pretty much it was people calling me up or saying, hey, I want to work with you, or could this project lead to this project? And after the first year, and I made a very good living. I came out of the blocks in the first year and did very, very good. The second year, I still did good, but it wasn't, I thought what would happen was what happened in my real estate business. Each year we would build year after year. If you brought in 50 people, then the next year you brought in 100 people, you would usually net out about 120, 130 people to keep building your empire. What I have found in the coaching, consulting, speaking business is it's almost like an actor. You're only as good as your last movie. So I'm finding that even though I have consulting clients, and some of them have been with me for the full 2 years, if you're a really great consultant, sometimes you consult yourself right out of a job. And sometimes you consult yourself right out of an opportunity because you help them reach what they're at. Or sometimes, unfortunately, some of those companies, I worked with a lot of startups when I was starting out as well. And sometimes the startups aren't getting the funding that they thought they would get, or they didn't get the seed money that they thought was coming in. So sometimes the consultant is the first to go in those scenarios. So what I found is the rotation of the fallout of my business was a little higher than I expected to build upon in the second year. And so I didn't double or triple like I thought I was going to, even though I was still making a good living. The thing in the second year as well is that's when I started my full speaking opportunities. And that really started flowing really well. And I had some really big engagements. And then they were a little farther and few between. So my thinking was I would have something big and prestigious every single month. And it didn't end up turning out like that, even though I had some really prestigious gigs. So it was my A personality expecting, and I still to this day expect high standards of myself and others. So that was probably some of the frustrations in the second year.
Got it. Well, I'm also curious, Steve, when you transitioned into full-time consulting and advisory work and speaking, a lot of people, especially CEOs, you might think have a very me-centric message. Here's my story. Here's my rise to fame and success and so forth. And I think you took a different path. I'm curious, how did you collect and collate your body of work, your sound bites, your mantras, your ideas? For example, you just shared that mantra that has always been a guiding principle in your life. How did you start to collect and collate those to make more of an audience-centric or a value-centric message and not just the Steve Rodgers story?
Yeah, that's a great question. Part of it is the theme of my book. The title's From Lead to Gold, An Entrepreneurial's Journey Through Transition and Transformation. So I figured if they were reaching out to me, they already kind of knew my story. And my book was more about some of my failures than my successes. And I was very vulnerable in my book, as I am in life, about sharing the frailties as a human being and that I am as a man and a human being in the world, and how all that is something that we all have in common as human beings, no matter who you are. And we rise above that every day. So when I'm working with my clients, I typically go right into what is it that is their biggest obstacles and where is their highest purpose in life and where are they not achieving that. So I typically go right to their pain points. Yes, I help people with three things: productivity, profit, and purpose. And the one I'm most excited about is purpose. So what I try and relay in my conversation, whether it's my speaking engagements or my consulting, is where are you feeling the biggest hole in your soul right now? And where are you feeling the most unfulfilled because you're not quite meeting your life's purpose and what you were here meant to do? And bringing people out to that big of a conversation, it's much easier to zoom back into the micro conversation about the day-to-day practices of their business. And I find that that's an immediate connection with most people. And if it's not, then it's probably not someone that I really have the big desire to work with. And so maybe it's not a fit. So it's kind of also a precursor of screening people out as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I want to talk about a little bit of what you just mentioned about both the niche and the topic, because you would think, okay, here comes Steve Rodgers, fabulously successful real estate CEO, at the height, 5,000 agents working under you. So clearly, the niche market that you want to serve is real estate, real estate, real estate. And clearly, the topic that you want to share is sales, sales, sales. And here you are saying, well, no, it's not necessarily just real estate, and it's not necessarily just sales. It's more about this concept of purpose. Talk about how you did not necessarily take that easier path of let me be the go-to guy for building real estate companies and building a big sales team under you, because that would be kind of the natural, obvious path, to going a less obvious path, maybe less niched, and maybe in a couple of ways a little bit more challenging. How did you carve that out?
Yeah, that's a great question. Thank you for asking that. Well, the way I carved it out was a brick upside the head moment. Although I had helped climb the ladder and build that company with Prudential, when I started with them, they had 400 real estate agents, and at our peak, we had 5,000. I went from being a manager there to becoming a CEO of the company, and Warren Buffett bought that company 7 years before I left it. But in the 2008 downturn of the market, as I had to help close half the company, we closed 45 of our 110 offices. A week before Christmas, I got fired. And I got pushed out into the world. And it was a major challenge for me to question myself is, am I my paycheck? Am I my title? Am I my contacts? Am I my driver? Am I my boat? Am I all that stuff? And I was so proud of myself that the answer was, no, I'm not all that stuff, but what really am I? And then I went out and started my own real estate company for 5 years. But in that search, I really dug very deep about what is my highest purpose and what is my highest calling. And I knew my real estate company was going to be a stepping stone to my next high purpose, which was going to be helping people transition and transform to their highest good, because I had to do that myself during that painful time of being fired after helping build a company for 15 years. So I thought my higher power, when I would meditate and pray, I said, what's my next step? What's my next step? And it wasn't about helping people make more money per se. And it wasn't about helping people get another house sale. It was really about helping people who want to transition from something they've been forced to do or something they're choosing to do that they don't have the strength and power at the moment to do. So this transition mantra kept playing in my head, transition, transform. And then the word alchemy popped in because I love the book, The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho. And it all just came together. So when I was looking for the title for my consulting company and I came up with Alchemy Advisors, and I had to dig deep on what was my mission, what was my vision, what was my core values, what were all those things. And I had to write them out like I do with my clients. What kept coming above is I had outgrown the real estate container of business. I love real estate. It's a phenomenally big, huge industry. But I realized my consciousness and my soul and my purpose had outgrown the real estate container itself. And I wanted to challenge myself to stretch bigger, deeper, wider, stronger. And so that's why I said, I've got to step out into just the general world and not just the world of real estate.
So Steve, I want to ask you, because you mentioned Brian Tracy. I also saw that you have a connection to Marshall Goldsmith. I always like to say, beware the coach without a coach. And you mentioned that you've been, always very transparent, always very vulnerable. Talk about the humility of reaching out for help with coaches and mentors in your life and how that's played a role in your own coaching and consulting business as the mentor when it's your turn to do so.
Wow, David, you always have such great questions, I'm learning. Let's see. So from the time I was in my late 20s and I challenged myself to go from sales in real estate to management, I knew that year if I was really going to break through that I needed some additional help, because the company kind of threw you into your seat and said, okay, we'll give you a little bit of training, but here's the goals we want you to hit. So that was the first year that I invested in an outside real estate management coach. And that was like in 1995, before real estate coaching and coaching in general was really at the magnitude it is now. And that helped me stay accountable to what I said I wanted to do. And I became very real about where I had downfalls. And that person, Diane Dobbins at the time, helped me really get to the next level. And year after year, I would either keep the same coach, and sometimes I would keep him for 2 years, but then I would rotate to another coach. So literally, since I was 26 or 27 years old, and I'm in my middle 50s now, I have had a business coach every single year. And the purpose of that was because I really wanted to challenge myself to be the best that I could be. One of my other vulnerable moments is a guy that barely graduated high school. I moved out of my house when I was 17. I went to a few years of community college, but never ended up getting a college degree. So I always worried I was going to be one of those guys that as I started climbing the corporate ladder, I was going to end up in one of these boardrooms that someone had a special key to all the answers in the world that I didn't quite have because I didn't have a college degree. And I remember when I met Warren Buffett for the first time, there was a definite trepidation about walking in the room and meeting him, which I quickly got over and realized I was worthy to be there. But a coach for me was like having a specific annual, detailed, laser-focused college degree in what I needed in that moment at that time during that period. And so I'm a big, big believer in coaches and helping you get to the next level.
Wow, what a great analogy about kind of like the just-in-time MBA, right?
Yes.
Just-in-time MBA. Like, I might not have the book learning, but man, when I need an answer, when I need a strategy, when I need some outside guidance, I pick up the phone and boom, I've got the guy or I've got the gal on the line.
Absolutely. It's been invaluable to me. It really has helped me transition not only my business acumen, but also my spiritual thinking and my health and fitness. To this day, I also, for the last 3 years, I have a health, nutrition, meditation coach who used to be a medical doctor, who now is a holistic practitioner, but he's 73 years old. And 3 years ago, I became a vegan, and who would have ever thought that? But I see him every 2 weeks, and I have accountability, and I check in with him, and we go through deep discussion on what that means and who I am. And so whether it's health or whether it's nutrition or whether it's business acumen or it's, acquisitions and mergers or marketing specialist or social media specialist, I realize I need help. I don't have all the answers. And when I do, sometimes I forget them. And I forget the knowledge I have. So sometimes coaches can help you laser back in also what you already have in your head to get it into a funnel to help others. And so that's kind of how I use coaches as well.
Yeah, no, that's really fantastic. So, Steve, last question, and a little bit of a trick question, I suppose. As a former CEO yourself, what would be some parting words of wisdom to really stop acting like a speaker or a coach or a consultant and really start acting like the CEO of our speaking and coaching and consulting businesses?
Yeah. And again, I love that question. What I used to tell my salespeople all the time, or managers or administrative assistants, is you having a CEO mindset of anything in your life, being the chief executive officer of your life and your destiny, whatever that is crucial. So I would tell my receptionists and admin and marketing managers and people say, well, we're behind the scenes, we're support staff. I said, well, you might be support staff, but in your own world, when you wake up in the morning, you put your feet on the floor and you go out to create your destiny and you exchange your time for relationships and money and what you're going to receive and give from that, you are the chief executive officer in your own destiny. So in the speaking, consulting, entrepreneurial world, we and I need to make sure that every day I'm making decisions at an executive level that are going to affect my sales, my marketing, my customer relationships, how I show up in the world, how my products and services are bettering the world, and how I'm making a difference and how I'm going to attract and keep the people who I say I want to serve. And then making sure that you keep the servant leadership mindset. I'm a big, big believer, and I've read about that and experienced it and practiced it for many, many years. But servant leadership, being a CEO, is a great combo.
There it is. You stuck the landing. I'm always looking for that closing line where you don't need to tie a ribbon around and go, okay, Steve, that was great. Thanks a lot. Right. But when you go boom, 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 servant leadership, bam, right? That is it. And then that's the outro. So very, very nice. Well, that wraps up another episode of The Speaking Show. Hey, tell you what, if you like us, rate us and review us on iTunes. Subscribe. Tell a friend. Go grab the notes and downloads and extras at thespeakingshow.com. See you next time.